Alright, hi guys. Sorry for the delay. It's been a little hectic. I wanted to just take it. I had planned to get this out earlier, but I just wanted to take a break, pound through, get the exams graded because we're running behind. Believe it or not, we have only 3 weeks left. Technically, two and a half before our final exam. So now, again, it's that mad rush. So what I'm hoping we're going to do is, at least New Deal, World War II is going to be 3 lectures, so that's going to be 4 more lectures. One, two. I can't say for certain, so don't hold on. I'd like to finish the class by the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. I can't promise we'll get that far. But what I'm hoping is we'll get through World War II. We'll at least have a lecture on the Cold War. We'll have a lecture, probably, if not Vietnam, space race, maybe both. We'll see how far we can get. But at least after this one, two, three, four, at least 5, maybe 6 lectures. Sorry, at least 5. I realize I'm kind of hunkering back here where you can barely see me. But at least 5 lectures, maybe 6. So what my hope is, also I've got a little bit of a cold apparently, yay. What my hope is to get, my computer apparently just got an email. I just lost my train of thought. Get what? 1, 2, 3 lectures this week. Probably do 2 next week, and then, 2 the following. So 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to plan for at least a max of 7 more lectures, but we'll just see how it goes. What we need to do right now before we get to the fun stuff of World War II is we need to talk about the New Deal. This is how the United States is going to combat the Great Depression. It's the brainchild of Franklin Roosevelt. And as you've hopefully seen from that Give a Man a Job short, this is going to be wildly popular in the United States. It's going to, more or less, they're going to say, if you don't, buy American goods, if you don't work with the National Recovery Act, if you don't work with the New Deal and support FDR, you are un-American. This is his brainchild. All sorts of American society, rich, poor, Hollywood, everybody is going to be on board with this. But understand, and these are key things because the New Deal will probably appear, it's going to be one of your essay questions, okay? The New Deal doesn't end the Great Depression. The Great Depression only ends with the advent of the Second World War. When you have a need for millions of men in uniform, building, hundreds of thousands of tanks, hundred thousands of planes, all that stuff, that kind of government spending will be what ends. I'm going to try to adjust my camera. There we go. That will be what ends this Great Depression. There we go. Eventually I'll stop messing with the camera. I just realized I tend to shake the table, so I should probably, stop being emphatic, But what we're going to see is with the New Deal, again, it doesn't end the Great Depression, but it helps it. It helps mitigate it enough where the United States can get by. And the key thing, remember, is the Great Depression. I'm actually going to back this up a little bit so you can get him. The Great Depression is a worldwide thing. Okay, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, all of these nations are affected by the Great Depression. And we're going to see that many nations are going to abandon their principles. Okay, the Soviet Union will become hardcore left-wing totalitarian. Okay, Britain will full-on become a welfare state. France will all but, just retreat into a shell of itself. The Germans embrace Nazism. The Italians embrace fascism. The Japanese give all power to the army. But in the United States, the New Deal is designed to protect capitalism. It doesn't fundamentally change the structure of the United States. It redefines, the relationship between civilian and government, but it does not fundamentally change the United States. Now, what we're going to see is this isn't technically part of New Deal, but this is one of the biggest things that FDR does immediately, is he ends prohibition. In 1933, the 21st Amendment becomes the only amendment to the United States Constitution that what it does is simply repeal the 18th Amendment. It just simply repeals a previous amendment. Okay, he's so emphatic when he signs it, he says, and now I think I'll have a beer. And in doing so, you can now purchase, transport, and manufacture alcohol in the United States once again. Now consider this, wherever you stand on the drug issue, I myself am not going to lie, if Mary Jane's your thing, more power to you, but not my thing. I do not care to partake. But if you've noticed, a lot of people, at least here in Oklahoma, sign the green the vote. Apparently a lot of people want to make marijuana illegal. Sorry, it's already illegal. Well, one of the arguments is tax it. If you tax the hell out of it, that's revenue for the government. Well, funny thing, that's exactly what happens with the end of Prohibition. This is at some level a recovery measure, because if you need to make booze, those are jobs. If you need to transport booze, those are jobs. If you want to sell booze, those are jobs. Okay? This is revenue for the government as well as jobs for people. So even though prohibition had been wildly, okay, people thought it was popular. To some people it was popular. Prohibition ending meant that there were now more jobs and more revenue for the government. And this is indicative of what Roosevelt wants to do. He wants to do things that had not been tried before, and he wants to try what for him are extreme measures, but from a worldwide scale are rather pale in comparison. We're going to see that early on. In the New Deal, there are two New Deals, the first and the second. And in the first, okay, it's about recovery, not reforming the system, not about making things better, but it's about relief and recovery. It's this idea, okay, we need to try to stop the, gaping chest wound that is the American economy. So we're going to see things. In the National Recovery Act, this is going to be, FDR's plan for what to do. And the idea was to create some business codes to regulate business, as well as to create sort of a voluntary participation thing, where you would agree to do things such as keep wages competitive, pay a fair price, make sure that you don't price gouge. Okay, the last thing you want is all the companies to get together. Say if, Coke and Pepsi would all get together and they say, okay, we're going to sell each of our stuff for $1 a unit, $1 a bottle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pay our workers the exact same. What that would mean is if, one company doesn't paying you well, you can quit and go to another company. Okay, you can transfer those skills from Pepsi to Coca-Cola. But if they have to be competitive, then it's that balance of, okay, we have to make sure that we not only pay you enough, but we keep you happy. The NRA, the National Recovery Administration, wanted to ensure that. It wanted to ensure that wages didn't just keep tanking. It wanted to ensure that companies stayed competitive so they couldn't all just jack up their prices, keep down their wages, and try to make back money. We're going to see the idea working only 45 hours a week. They actually want to pay a minimum wage. They want fair labor. They want to try to somewhat reform the system. Now, the NIRA, the National Industrial Recovery Act, which we'll talk about if my computer will here in a second, this stuff is mandatory. But the NRA as a whole is voluntary. What they would do is they say, okay, you must be a patriotic, America-loving company to join. If you don't join, if you don't hang one of these out in the window and do what we say, you are un-American. And they will try to tell you, as a consumer, don't go to a restaurant that doesn't have the NRA thing. Don't go to buy stuff from somebody not displaying that. Watch a Hollywood movie between 1933 and early 1935. At the very beginning or the very end, they'll have an NRA thing saying, we do our part. Hollywood wanted to get on board with this. Here's the thing, though. This only helps big businesses. Okay, 22 million workers and 500 companies by 1934 will voluntarily participate on this. But here's the issue. Small business can't keep up. Small business can't afford to pay fair wages and stay competitive. They just can't do it. Okay, imagine, if you will, because this is actually going to happen, the case of, okay, you're a small business owner, you've got, say, 10 workers. And this actually happened. I can never remember the company's name, but it did happen. And he was told, okay, you've got to pay your workers 45 cents an hour. Well, there's just no way he can do it. I mean, the guy didn't make enough money to do that. Now, he said, he called his employees and said, look, here's what the government wants. He said, I can pay all of you 20 cents an hour. Okay, it's a little bit more than what you're making now, but it's not what the government wants. He said, I can pay you all 20 cents an hour and give all of you jobs, or fire half of you and pay who's left 45 cents an hour. And every one of his employees voted and said, yes, we want to stay working for you. Okay, 25% unemployment. We're not going to find jobs. If he fires 5 people, 3 will get jobs. The other 2, they're probably going to shoot themselves. They all said, look, 20 cents is better than nothing. But the government says no. The government shut the guy down, and the government made him fire people to pay the others 45 cents an hour. I'm not saying that people who want $15 wages at McDonald's are wrong. I do believe people should be paid a fair wage. But understand, there's that tipping point. And granted, that's a larger industry. But if everybody has to pay that $15, Smaller businesses, ma and pa type places, may not be able to keep up. And you have to ask yourself the question, in a bad economy, is some money better than none? I mean, if you have enough money to pay your bills, is that better than what you should be working? I don't know. It's just something to think about. But in the case here, the New Deal, that's actually what's going to happen. Big businesses can afford to do this. So, some small businesses can, but a majority can't. A majority can't compete with the NIRA business codes, the National Industrial Recovery Act. Okay, it's going to do things like abolish child labor. Oh, you want to pay a kid to do that? Tell you what, for competitive wages, pay an adult to do that. Give a man a job. Let's have unions. Why? Because unions ensure competition. Competition ensures that businesses aren't going to screw over the little guy. 20 to 45 cents an hour becomes the minimum wage. Sounds like a stupid small amount to us today, but consider, okay, that, in 1935, okay, you could get a hamburger for a nickel, a hamburger for 5 cents. Okay, so let's do some extrapolations. You're paid 20 cents, the bare minimum. Okay, you can buy 4 hamburgers for working in an hour. Okay, I just ate at Brahms earlier today where a burger cost like $4. Okay, so that would be the equivalent of, you'd have to make what, $16 an hour to be the equivalency. This is a fairly good minimum wage. Hours for the first time, limited to 45 hours a week. Any more than that, you have to be paid overtime. You have to be paid time and a half. But again, the smaller companies can't keep up. The government, by executive order, okay, will pass other regulations. And then finally, in 1935, in the case Schechter Poultry Corporation versus the United States, the National Recovery Act will be ruled unconstitutional. What happens is, rather than have laws passed via Congress, Roosevelt tries to legislate via executive order, and it doesn't work. The Supreme Court says, no, that is not the purview of the executive branch. If Congress wants to make laws saying you do all this stuff, that's fine. But if the president wants to just arbitrarily say you have to do this and this and this, no, you cannot do that. And this is, by the way, it seems like not too much, but understand as I get really emphatic. Woo! By the way, since I know I made a Star Wars joke before, it's 1 month from when I'm recording this that Star Wars Force Awakens comes out. And not to dampen my evals, which, by the way, I believe on Blackboard you should start seeing the course evals. If you want to complain about the course, that's fine. If you want to praise the course, please do. I do apologize if there's some things you don't like. Feedback would be awesome. I'm not going to see it for like a year. But this is my first time doing an online course. Third year teaching, 8th year in higher ed, but first time online class. But not to piss a lot of you off before, but all I'm going to say is, Force Awakens comes out in a month, and all I can say to that is live long and prosper. So what we're going to see is why this is so important, okay? Why, not Star Trek, but which Star Trek is important, unless you're a red shirt, and then you just suck at life. But why the, Schechter Poultry Corp v. the United States is important, okay, is it shows that our government has limits, okay? Congress can pass whatever law it damn well pleases, but the president cannot legislate via executive order. He cannot overstep his bounds. There is always a check and balance. If Congress or the Supreme Court don't like it, they can shut it down. But I'm going to skip ahead just very briefly. Alphabet soup. Where is it? I should really plan this better, but I just had the thought of doing this. Wow. There we go. That's 1935, okay? 1935, the United States Supreme Court says no to the Roosevelt administration. Your signature piece of legislation, what you wanted to do, the executive branch cannot do that. I don't know why I'm saying okay, but there you go. But in the 1920s, 10 years before, fascist dictator Benito Mussolini takes the power in Rome. I don't know why, bad Italian accent. Pasta. Anyways, he takes power in Italy. And the idea of fascism is you give everything to the government. Your individual rights don't matter. The government will legislate everything. Okay? That's going to be horrible. The old joke is going to be the only thing Mussolini could do was make the trains run on time. But it's just the thought of, whereas we are saying, no, the leader has limits. The President of the United States has limits. The 1920s, Benito Mussolini, who is never elected, by the way, he's never elected Il Duce, the Duke, the leader of Italy. Okay, he's never elected, he's never appointed. The king, Vittorio Emanuele, never appoints him. He just literally marches to Rome and takes power. Nobody stops him. Even the freaking king of Italy, who is above him, does nothing. In the United States, we say no. 1933, Adolf Hitler is named chancellor. Okay. Then, somebody sets fire to the Reichstag, so he takes emergency dictatorial powers for life. He becomes Der Führer, the leader. And under the Nazi state, okay, as the Nazis would say, Führer Befehl wir folgen. The Führer orders, we follow. Okay. Whatever Adolf Hitler says, you do. Okay. If Hitler says we're going to go burn down the Jewish ghettos, somebody goes and burns them down. If Hitler says we're going to, abolish the Reichstag, we're just going to dismiss Parliament. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye law-making body. If Hitler says we're going to invade Poland, you do it. Hitler takes full control of everything. Okay, the Japanese. Okay, what we're going to see is they'll give all the power to the army, and the army will run the country, and there will be assassinations, rife, all sorts of political warfare. And the government controls every aspect of society. All marching to one leader. Okay? Benito Mussolini rules Italy with an iron fist. Adolf Hitler rules Germany. Okay? But with the New Deal, because FDR never sets out to change it, never sets out to change the American system, even if this is good, even if this will help, even if this is tame, the American system can say, no, you've gone too far. You have gone too far. We cannot do that. That, to me, is the critical significance of the New Deal. And by the way, I should say, I'm very, I'm not very conservative at all, but I do consider myself conservative. Here's a conservative vote for you. I'm a Ronda Rousey fan. It sucks to see she lost, but as the joke goes, she's practicing what she preaches. 5 days before her last fight, she endorsed Bernie Sanders. Now she's redistributed the championship. So, hey, everybody wins. But, sorry, bad joke. But what the hell was I saying? Oh, I've literally gone on a spiel of the New Deal. And I've had a very conservative student, come up to me and said, thank you for teaching the true conservative ways of American history, not being like so many of those liberal professors. Here's the thing. I am very pro-New Deal. Okay? It creates it's the seed of the welfare state of the United States that will blossom with John LBJ's Great Society. Okay, it is a rapid expansion of the American government. This is as close to communism as we're ever going to get because, the government finally says, hey, guess what? We have a duty to protect you. But for me, the significance of why the New Deal is so critical is it never changes the relationship between, it never changes the fundamental idea of capitalism. Okay? If you were to look at the United States in 1937, it's not going to look all that different from the United States of 1927. Okay? Whereas the Great Depression became so bad that Britain, full-on welfare state. That Germany, Nazism, where, okay, we need a fall guy. Jews, you're the fall guy. Everything's your fault. And that spawns a world war. Italy, give everything to a fascist dictator. That helps spawns a world war. The Japanese, to hell with it, let the army run it. Spawns a world war. The United States says, no, we're going to reform, we're going to recovery, but we are going to do so with limits. We don't become communist like the Soviets. We don't embrace socialism. And yes, there is a difference between the two. We don't embrace totalitarianism. We don't embrace Nazism. Instead, we put things in place that, while addressing reform, do protect the fundamental core values of the United States. To do that, we're going to have the creation of what will be called Roosevelt's alphabet soup. And these are numerous programs that are designed to provide some sort of relief to the American worker. Don't remember dates, but I do expect you to be able to name drop a few of these on your New Deal question. You're going to have things like the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, the original AAA, where there will be three of them. The whole point, keep farm prices high. What they'll do is they'll pay farmers, don't grow so much. Slaughter excess livestock. Do that so the market doesn't get flooded. It drives the prices up. You have the Civilian Conservation Corps. Okay, let's get people out there building national parks, protect wildlife. Do these things so that they are something that you're going to get paid for. Okay, rather than, okay, here's a handout or here's a welfare check. You would be taken from your home, assigned to one of these projects, probably in another state. When you were paid, you would be paid about 40% of what you were supposed to. The rest would be sent home on your behalf. Okay, this would make sure that you wouldn't get to fritter away the money, but you're going to use it to get on your feet. You have the Tennessee Valley Authority. Build hydroelectric dams in Tennessee. Let's bring electricity to everybody. Or for the Second New Deal, 1935, let's have the Works Progress Administration. Let's build federal projects all over the United States just to earn money. Let's build roads. Let's build buildings. Let's build sidewalks. Okay, among all of them, you might find, even to this day, signs like this: Works Progress Administration, Project 1937. Here in Stillwater, they would build sidewalks to neighborhoods that didn't even exist, just zoning them just so people would have some sort of work. If we want to look at just how widespread this is, I mean, this is by 36. Okay, this becomes, this is huge. I mean, this becomes the source of income for a lot of people. But there's a problem. Anybody remember the TARP funding and the TANF, the Temporary Assistance Relief Program, stuff like that? And when the Republicans wanted to end it after about, 6-7 years, people said, no, it's going to hurt the economy. You're taking jobs away from people. You can't do that. Evil Republicans. Keyword, temporary. These were designed to get people on their feet. Well, the same thing is true of the Works Progress Administration. It was supposed to help you get on your feet. You do this while you try to find another job. You do this saving money so that you can then get yourself out. But the problem is people thought that these were legit jobs that they could have forever. You're going to see protests. We can just survive on $55 a month. Or extend WPA to 4 million jobs. This idea, we need more, we need more, we need more. Okay, this had not been done in American history before, and people, thought that these were jobs that they should have, for the foreseeable future. And they're only designed as temporary relief. And that's the thing. When you're dependent on the government, okay, remember that it comes at a price. You act according to its whim, not according to yours. And I say that not because I'm against food stamps, welfare, and if you need help, fine, that's cool. I say it because this is the first time in American history that people become dependent on the government. It's not happened before, but it's going to happen in increasing numbers. Now, there's a couple of other things. We're going to see, the Public Works Administration, so dams, bridges. We're going to build the Hoover Dam this way. We're going to see the food stamp program. Now the government says if you can't feed yourself, they need to help. But the issue you need to understand is this doesn't fix the underlying problems. It doesn't fix what caused the Great Depression. It doesn't fix why people can't get long-term jobs. It can't fix 25% unemployment. Okay, you get a job with the PWA, you're not going to build bridges for the rest of your life. You're doing it as a stopgap. And the first New Deal doesn't fix any of these problems, and the problems continue. Again, the New Deal helps the Great Depression, but it never, ever ends it. That's going to take until World War II. Now, what is new? Okay, now, actually, before we do that, if you don't believe that the New Deal is conservative, okay, FDR always damn liberal, blah, 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 damn government, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm making... My Facebook, believe it or not, nobody's talking about election season. Now it's the whole Syrian refugee things, which I'm just going to say this. However you want to stand on the issue, it's fine. You're an American citizen. People fought and died for the right for you to say that. But just bear in mind this. In 1938 and 1939, the United States refused Jewish immigration. Okay, the Jews that were fleeing Nazi Germany, many wanted to come here. Many wanted to go to other nations, and most refused. Why I say that is because they refused. Literally, there were cases of ships of Jews coming to the United States, and customs saying, no, that's it, go back. They would have to go back to Nazi Germany. There are cases of Jews that would try to cross the border to Belgium. The Belgians mobilized troops to keep them out, with the result that, unable to solve its Jewish problem, the Germans then decided, well, if we can't deport them, then we must exterminate them. Okay? I get that, Syria, terrorists are going to try to come in with the refugees. That's just a fact of life. But guess what? They're going to try to come here no matter what. Okay? Anybody, you might not remember, this was from several years ago, the Madrid bombing in Spain. Okay? Or there was a bombing in London. There were no refugees then, but it still happened. Okay? It's going to happen. But understand, as we're building up, and I think it's very poetic that I just realized I stopped here, these NSDAP, the National Socialist Deutsche Arbeitspartei, the German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. This is a Nazi Party rally at Nuremberg, 1934. The Germans wanted to get the Jews out, and the world refused to take them, and that's one of the reasons they decided on the final solution. The final solution, the Wannsee Conference, 1942, where the Germans decide that a Jew-free Europe means that, just kill them. Industrialized mass slaughter. And I realize I'm going on a tirade, so this should probably be saved for when we get to the Holocaust, but, as my Facebook newsfeed explodes over whether or not we should take in the Syrian refugees, and the fact that as of last night, 30 state governors refused to allow refugees in their state despite no legal authority to do so. Understand, the world faced a similar crisis in 1939, and the world did nothing, and the result was millions upon millions of people dead. The Germans entertained plans of just deporting them to the United States, deporting them to Europe, but we wouldn't take them. They then said, well, what if we deport them to Madagascar? And then they said, well, that's too much. So they shot them and gassed them, and horrible experiments. Now, I'm not saying the Syrian refugees are exactly the same, but this is the worst refugee crisis since the Second World War. And there comes a point where, history does repeat itself. Not in the sense of the exact same thing happening, but we can see those similar trends. And so I just simply ask, and I'm not saying your position's wrong, but I'm saying at least I'm going to steal a line, if any of you are Doctor Who fans. Do you know what thinking is? If you've seen the latest episode of series, the Zygon Inversion episode. Do you know what thinking is? It's just a fancy word for changing your mind. Well, I just want you to think, or at least entertain the notion. What makes you, if you don't believe it, if you don't believe we should take them, what makes you different in 2015 saying no Syrian refugees to the person in 1939 saying, well, we don't want any Jews. We don't want Jews in the United States. Remember, the second KKK was anti-Jewish as well. They hated Jews and immigrants and African Americans. What makes the position different? Well, the Holocaust, there was no Holocaust in 1938 or 39. Okay, sure, you have Kristallnacht, 1938. But Dachau was filled primarily with political prisoners. Okay, the mass exterminations don't happen until 1939 when the Germans invade Poland. By then, it's too late. Okay? What we now know as the Holocaust industrial warfare doesn't begin until 1942 after the Wannsee Conference. So what I'm just asking, if you're entitled to your opinion, you don't want them, fine. I'm not telling you it's wrong. But I'm simply asking, entertain the notion. And if you can say, hey, this is what's different, this is why I don't think we should, that's fine. If you can answer that to where, but at least take that moment, because understand, here with the New Deal, we're talking where the United States was at one of those critical points where we could have gone down the road to Nazism. Understand, okay? There was a German-American Bund, okay? I'm actually going to pause it. I'm going to find an image really quick, so if you'll just wait one, I'll be right back, which for you, it's going to be instantaneous. All right, and we're back. And so I'll let this be from the end of my soapbox. But understand, the Holocaust, it's important to me because I'm like, how can people just be such assholes? How can human beings be just so mean to one another? And so if we want to look back at our history, again, this is Madison Square Garden, 1939. The German-American Bund, the American Nazi Party, trying to link Nazism with being an American. And we see here, let's see, free, it's just this idea, you have to belong to this type of Nazi organization if you want to be a free American. That's what they would tell you. And so understand, with this refugee crisis, am I saying that we're Nazis? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, do we deny several thousand people the right to life, liberty, and happiness because one or two might be bad eggs? At what point do we say, well, we don't want to risk that? We don't want to risk, all of this stuff, but at the same time we want to say, well, this is America, land of the free, home of the brave. Give us your tired, your weak, your weary poor, yearning to breathe free. At what point do we either have to live up to the motto on the Statue of Liberty, or we just need to send the damn thing back to France because that's not who we are as a people anymore? And so that's, we'll get back on the soapbox when we get to the Holocaust. But understand, these things are starting in the New Deal. Okay, World War II, the start of the Holocaust, all that right here. And the United States says, no, this isn't who we are. We're going to protect our institutions. We will endure. And we'll even see some want to be more on the radical side. We're going to see guys like Huey Long, who, and I might post a video of him, but Huey Long was the advocate of something called a Share Our Wealth movement. And his idea was that the New Deal did not go far enough. That the New Deal should, this is Bernie Sanders on steroids, that we should in fact tear down capitalism and build anew. And so Huey Long, along with other socialists, guys like Upton Sinclair, remember him from the jungle, and they said that we're going to just tax every income over $1 million. The government then is going to take all that money and make a $5,000 payment to each citizen, man, woman, and child. And each year, give every citizen an income of $2,500 a year. Now it doesn't sound like that much. But consider this. I'm going to do math. It's going to suck. Bear with me. $55, so $110 every 2 months. If you work with the WPA, times 6, $660 a year is what you would work with the WPA. And here they're going to give you, 8 times that. This would have been almost, Disneyland, Christmas come early, insert analogy here. But he doesn't want to stop there. He wants old age pensions, free education. The government would forcibly seize all surplus food. You would almost be rationed. Now the thing is, this was too extreme for most people. The New Deal was seen as very, very liberal at the time. Today we can see it's actually fairly conservative. But here was the one attempt to make it really, really, really liberal, and the American people had none of it. It didn't get that much traction. Long will be assassinated, and then eventually the whole movement just falls apart. Americans wanted change, but we did not want that change. We did not want to abandon what we had seen as the core values of what made us great. But we do get some changes. Okay, we're going to get things, the Social Security Act, and this, will create the modern welfare state we know. It starts in 1935, it's going to be really boosted in the 1960s, and then we have it today. The idea, and you guys, I'm sure, you're all working adults, so I'm sure you know this, is that they're old age pensions. Workers and employers will pay taxes. And then, theoretically, when you retire at age 65, you then get to draw it. It provides some sort of, safety net, some sort of security. But here's a fun fact, okay? Does anybody know, well, I guess you can't answer, what the retirement, or not retirement, what is the average life expectancy of Americans today? No? Okay, I'm just kidding. 77 to 75, somewhere in their late 70s. Living to your mid-80s is no longer uncommon, okay? So if you retire at 65, you get to, you're planning on drawing it for 10 to 15 years. This creates the idea, well, live out my golden years, okay? 1935, the life expectancy was 62. Most Americans would not collect this. Most would then die fairly early on. The thing is here, the people who were really, really old, the people who could not work, that was who was going to actually collect this. So understand, that's why it's sustainable in the 1930s. Most people that pay in are never going to collect. Out of that, farmers and other certain laborers were ineligible. Only certain people could collect into this. So it's sustainable in the 30s. But now, okay, You hit 65, boom, you get to collect. Oh, you got a disability, boom, at 20, you get to collect. Oh, your widowed child, well, now they get to collect. Have widowed child, jeez. You know, well, if you're a widower and your child, they can collect. So all of that sort of stuff means that people are drawing into it, even people who have not paid into it. And so it's this issue of, that's why people are worried. Is it sustainable? You can't raise the retirement age because people go, oh, hell no. I remember once I worked at Walmart and this lady was talking about how, she got benefits in addition to her Social Security, and she got a whopping $10 a month. And she came in with her access card, and she was like, it's criminal how much I've got. The government owes me more than that. People feel owed this. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying welfare is bad, but you can't tell people who expect the government is going to do stuff for them at 65, say, well, I think you need to wait till 68 or 70. They're going to say, oh, hell no. And no, that's political suicide. Nobody is going to win an election saying, I'm going to raise your retirement age. Congrats, you voted for me. Work 5 more years. It's not going to happen. We're going to get other stuff. Unemployment insurance. Now, after, you quit the job after the tub of, vodka and the cup of ice cream, or the cup of vodka and tub of ice cream, whichever you prefer, you can go get some money from the government to help get you back on your feet. You're no longer just out in the cold. And so what we're going to see is, that now the government now actually cares about you. Then we're going to get a Fair Labor Relations Act and the Wagner Act. Now we're going to have a National Labor Relations Board. And then with the Fair Labor Standards Act, we completely change the dynamic between employers and workers. Employers and workers. Okay, now you have to be treated fairly. Now you have to actually, be worked, and you have to have safe working conditions. You get hurt on the job, you have workman's comp. Okay, if you don't like what your boss is doing, you can go report him. If your boss sexually harasses you, you can go file a complaint. If you're working too many hours, you can go complain. There are protections there. This is now starting to reform the system. Now we're going to reform the United States so that these things don't happen again, so that we don't have another Great Depression. Now, the New Deal is going to start to come to an end because FDR goes a little too far. FDR is kind of pissed about the demise of the National Recovery Act. So what he decides to do is what's called the court packing scheme. The idea is, he says, okay, I've been overwhelmingly reelected in 1936. The people love me. I can do no wrong. So what I'm going to do is to try to get more liberal justices in the court, because 70-year-old dudes have been there forever. They've been appointed by conservatives. I want to appoint one judge of his choice for every person over the age of 70, up to 6. Now, why is this a problem? How many justices are supposed to be on the Supreme Court as mandated by the Constitution? Doesn't say. The Supreme Court is created by the Judiciary Act of 1789. There can be as many justices as they want. Now it's 9. It used to be 6. This, however, is blatantly manipulating the system. This is an overt attempt by a president to make the Supreme Court political. And people didn't like it. They said, no, you can't do this. The American people said no. Congress started to cut the purse strings on the New Deal. And so that, coupled with Roosevelt wanting to balance the budget, leads to a recession. We're also going to see that what's important about the court packing plan, as it's called, is FDR, remember, is very charismatic. The fireside chats, the deals with Hollywood, he survives this. Any other president, I'm almost convinced, this would have destroyed their presidency. But Roosevelt just simply owns up and says, hey, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Now, what I want you to take about, so that's going to help in the New Deal. Congress getting pissy is going to help in the New Deal. But there's also the issue of people still believed in balanced budgets. And so as they're paying for all this, the debt is starting to slowly increase. So Roosevelt decides, okay, let's raise taxes, cut some spending, and recession. So now it's a case of you have to spend more money than you have to fix the problem. But as any of you with credit cards know, how can you spend more money than you have? Well, here's the part where you need to realize that the government lives in fantasy la-la land that you and I will never see. If my credit card, if I have a limit of $100, I can only spend $100. If they tell me that am in debt, I cannot raise my debt ceiling. I cannot spend myself out of debt. But the government sure can. And with that, we see a shift to Keynesian economics, which still dominates the American system to this day. What we're going to see is FDR, remember, wants to balance the books. That's what you're supposed to do. But things are getting better. You've got unemployment down to 14%. You have all these programs, but they cost a lot. So raise taxes, scale back spending, and the economy tumbles again. And so Roosevelt realizes that something has to be done. The more money you spend, the better, but you also can't raise taxes. You can't tax and spend. So he listens to a guy named John Maynard Keynes. And Keynes, it's where we get Keynesian economics, says that that spending need not be tied to revenue. That you can get revenue from something, but you can rack up magical fantasy dollars somewhere else and pay it off at some other point. So if you take in, consider this. We have a national debt, We have to deficit spend. We hear about how, much in debt, how many trillions of dollars the government is. Did you get a refund check with your taxes? I did. Did you know anybody that, well, I'm sure there's a few people that didn't. Actually, with mine, I almost didn't. No, sorry, it was the state of Oklahoma who apparently couldn't read a 4. I filed my taxes and I owed $400. Screw you, Oklahoma. And apparently my handwriting is so bad that despite all the calculations said I owed $400, get a tax bill. We've received your $400, but you owe us another $5. We've revised your stuff. I called them and like, oh no, we couldn't tell if it was a 4 or a 9, so we just put it. Even though your calculations said 4, we just put in a 9. Again, screw you, state of Oklahoma. But aside from paying to the state, do you get a refund from the government? Most likely. How is it the government's in debt, but it still has the ability to give us, a sizable portion of our taxes back? Because revenue and spending are not tied. The government can take in $55 billion, but go spend $100 billion. And that's perfectly fine. We just say, oh, well, we'll pay it next time. We'll pay it next time. We'll pay it next time. Again, why can't I do this, with my credit card or with my bills? I mean, I do it with my student loans, but that's another story. Yay, $71,000. Anyways, so what we're going to see is Roosevelt realizes, okay, spend, and don't worry about revenue. If you hike up taxes, that solves the economy. So low taxes plus spending. The issue is this helps get us out of the Depression, okay? It helps alleviate it, and it's what we're going to have to do with World War II. But there's also, but if we look here, national debt is percent of gross national product. Less than 20 before the Great Depression. Up to 40. He discovers Keynesian economics. It rises a bit. World War II, it hits up to 120. But we've never stopped. Okay, we have never stopped. It has not dipped below 35% since before the Great Depression. We still just spend. Never mind, how much, we owe. Never mind any of that. So what we're going to see is the New Deal creates the new American system. It creates the system you and I live in to this day. Now, when it came in, parts of it was wildly popular. NRA, we're all walking together. Workers, labor, workers, employers, and the government. Other people, haters going to hate. This farmer is not on government relief. But understand that this is going to shape the modern American system. Now, I put in this little bit about the Dust Bowl. I don't want to talk too much about it. We are running behind. It's 43 minutes. I want to try to keep this video under an hour. But one thing that I do think you should be aware of is with the Dust Bowl, okay, you've got all these problems with the Great Depression. We're in the throes of this bad depression, all that. What we're going to see is at the same time, remember those farmers who, okay, well, a bushel of wheat, I needed... if I made $60 on it, now I only make 30, so let's grow 2. Well, then that doesn't work. Let's grow 4, and on and on and on and on. They screw up the topsoil. They don't let stuff lie fallow. And so eventually drought hits, windstorms hit, and it blows away the top layers of topsoil. And we're going to see major dust storms that are going to more or less wreck the Great Plains area. It's going to be pretty bad for everyone out there. It's going to kill livestock, it's going to kill crops, throw people out of work, and it becomes so bad that if you're out in the dust, in the Dust Bowl, and you'd have a mask on your face. You get inside, you spend maybe 30 seconds out there. People were literally coughing up about a liter of dirt out of their lungs. Babies are going to die. Elderly is going to die. Apparently, dust pneumonia is a thing because people will die from it. And this is going to last throughout the 1930s. I had a few images, but I didn't put them here. But I do want to at least pay some service to that, because understand, this is a pretty rough time for the United States. And it explains why when the Nazis and the fascists and the totalitarians all start building up to do their stuff for World War II, why we stay out of it. We have the Great Depression, we have the Dust Bowl. We can't, and that's my other big thing, because I lied, I'm going to get back on the serious soapbox. We say we don't, one of my favorite memes I see going on is, no refugees so long as there's, one homeless person in America, or one homeless veteran. And I agree, we should take care of people like that, though, I see the people who post those are mostly conservative, the same people that don't want government handouts. So how are you going to fix the problem? But moving on from that, we said no to Jewish refugees because we had the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. We said no to wanting to get involved in the League of Nations because we said, no, we want isolationism. We have our own problems. When intervention could have prevented or at least, mitigated some of the effects of the Second World War, we said, no, we have our own problems. Okay? As much as you might not want Syrians, because we have our own problems. If there's anything I hope you take out of this last unit of World War I, Great Depression, New Deal, World War II, Cold War, is that the United States can no longer bury its head in the sand and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. Okay, the plight of people in the Middle East is our problem. The plight of people in Europe is our problem. We live in a globalized economy. A globalized world. And to simply say, well, we have our own problems, it's exactly what we said in the 1930s. It's exactly what protesters were saying on December the 6th, 1941, the day before. Okay, the battleship Arizona explodes at Pearl Harbor, and we have to declare war. We said, no, we have our own problems. If Europe, and I'll literally show you these things, if Europe wants to go to war, we should stay out. No AEF, no American troops. We said no, just as the Nazis came to power, as all that, and it exploded into a world war. I'm not saying that I know the solution. I'm not even saying we should take the Syrians. I'm not trying to be pro or against. I'm just simply saying there are historical parallels that if we're here, I'm going to point them out to you. That is my job. I'm not going to make your mind up for you. That is for you. Now, I've included these 3 slides to help. I'm probably just going to gloss over them. But just to talk about the impact of the New Deal on American life. Okay, again, it helps, but it doesn't solve. It puts people to work, but wages are low. The jobs are temporary. If you think about it, it's an extension of that progressive era. Once it turns to reform, let's fix the ills of American society. We're going to see racism. If you were African American, well, if there was a white guy who applied before you, he went. If you finally got called up, you would have to go work on your own segregated projects. You would not work with white people, and you would be paid less. That racism is still there in full display. Minorities don't share this, only really benefits the white people. We're going to see that once again, it doesn't end. I think each of these 3 slides says that. It doesn't transform the American economic system. We get new government regulation. We get the expansion of the federal government. But free enterprise is still there. There's no wealth redistribution. There's no universal health care. We have old age pensions. We now have safety nets. But it doesn't radically change everything. We've got Keynesian economics. It's something we're still there today. But it's not going to solve the problems. And in fact, one of the things is we have to stop working with the New Deal. Because 38 to 39, FDR starts getting drawn more and more to European affairs, watching what's going on. And so there's that whole thing of now building a coalition of people who might be willing for involvement. Republicans are more likely for foreign policy, but the Democrats want the New Deal, and Roosevelt has to build this coalition. So even though, and please, even though the Great Depression, okay, that slide said 1929 to 1941, or 1933. The Great Depression does not end until 1941. The 33 was just when we stopped. It takes the Second World War for the Great Depression to actually end. If we want to look at successes, We have an old age pension. Okay, initially, it's not a burden on the American economy. If you live to be that old, you could draw, you could live happily, and it didn't hurt the system. People now decide, okay, we want more and more types of reform and relief. It creates a new reform mentality in the United States. We have a balance between reform and dignity. Okay, we're not going to give you handouts. We're going to make jobs for you to work, and the American people overwhelmingly responded to that. We're going to get new political coalitions. The idea, Republicans might hate the New Deal, but they like foreign policy. Or, the socialist might not think the New Deal goes far enough, but hey, it's better than nothing. So he can wield this coalition. But probably the biggest success is that this is a way the United States can survive the Great Depression, that we can make it as a nation through. We don't have to, fascism. We don't have to give everything to the government and say, somebody else, fix it for us. If you want political murders, do it, but hey, fix the problems for us. We don't need Nazis. We don't have to say, here, find me somebody to blame, and so I will follow you blindly so that you will tell me things aren't that bad when they get much worse. We don't have to do that. We don't have to, socialist. We don't have full government control. We don't have to go communist, redistribute wealth. We can find a way to preserve our institutions and transition them into a new era in a way that, it changes them. Yeah, there's additions, but the institutions are still largely there as they always had been. To me, that is the key success of the New Deal. And for that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I do apologize for getting on the soapbox bus here. I generally don't want to be political, political joke, sure, make fun of everybody. But I mean, in this thing, it's that case of if you just listen to what's being said, it's very, very, very reminiscent of what was said in the 30s. And it's one of those, it reminds me of a story when I was in high school years and years and years and years ago. I've always had an interest in history. Again, for anybody that might want to be a historian, as was explained to me by my graduate department head, you do this job because you're so brain damaged you can't do anything else useful to society. I've always had an interest in history. I've always been fascinated by the Second World War. I'm not going to lie, and I hope, if not in the spring, in my August intersession, you guys take it. If not, the next time I offer, I'd love to have you in my World War II class. Being able to teach that is a dream come true. Because, both my grandparents were in the Second World War. And, one of my grandfathers, my maternal grandfather, I was the only one he could talk to about it. I mean, his family, his kids, his wives, never knew that much about it. But I remember being a young child, he'd pull me over and he'd talk about it. And getting back to the story, so I've always had an interest in it. And I knew some little German. My wife speaks fluent German, so I don't. I know like 5 phrases, Ich bin ein Berliner. Okay, there's my Mayor Quimby impression to finish stuff off. But I remember being in high school. This one guy said, "You're just an effing Nazi. You like things German. You like Nazis. Nazis are bad." Blah blah blah. Just went on this tirade, which I don't like Nazis. Nazis are I hate Illinois Nazis. A few minutes later, okay, it was in my sociology class, my freshman year of high school. The teacher, gave an assignment, changed something out, and the same kid who had just accused me of being a Nazi, said, "Well, that's Jewish." Okay, in the same moment, he would accuse me of being a Nazi, but then he would use Jewish as a slang term for saying, "Well, that sucks, that's stupid." Okay, that's the problem with history. Okay, I'm building up to this World War II, where, I mean, again, this is where humanity, loses itself. We lose our humanity for a brief few years. And so when I see this stuff about Syrians and I see just these parallels, I'm going to remind you, because it's one thing for us to say it, 2015, and, we believe we're right. But at the same time, we'll look back on our ancestors. We'll look back in the Holocaust and say, well, why didn't you let them in? If you had just let the Jews in, there wouldn't have been a Holocaust. How could you do that? But today, oh, no. 10,000 Syrians, there might be 2 terrorists in there. Oh, we can't do that. And so bear in mind, and, history, and this is my soapbox, so if you're still listening, thank you. Pay attention to what's around you, because history is being made every minute of every day. And you might not think it's important right now, but there could be a case when in 10, 20 years you see that you are witnessing the making of history. And every time you think or do something, I don't believe there's a right or wrong side of history because none of this is predestined. I mean, inevitability is, nothing is inevitable, okay? Death, taxes, and the sun blowing up. But other than that, pay attention to what's going on. And if you take nothing else from this class, and I know most of you, you're only here because you feel you've got, well, you do have to be. OSU says you've got to take it. But if you take nothing else from this class, don't remember the specifics. Well, remember them for the final, but don't remember that so much as remember that what you're doing and the things you say today, okay, in 50 years, people will be analyzing that and scrutinizing it, and they will pass judgment. We passed, in this class, I'm sure a few of you have been like, why the hell were Southerners, just such a-holes to slaves? Okay, some of you are going to be like, well, why did we not stop the gang wars in Chicago? Why didn't we do something about the KKK? Why didn't we do this, that, or the other thing? Okay, in 50 years, people might say, well, why didn't they take in the Syrians? Why didn't, the United States step up and actually live up to the words on the Statue of Liberty? Or they could rightly say, hey, it's a good thing they didn't because they're all terrorists. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I don't know. You don't know. Time will tell. But just consider that your actions, maybe not individual, but certainly as a collective group, do shape the world. They do shape the events that are coming. And so my plea to you is just be mindful of that. If you're going to share a Facebook meme, if you're going to take a stance, that's fine. I mean, this is America. People literally died so you could say whatever the heck you wanted. But at least put some thought into it and at least give thought to repercussions or how it's going to look in the future. Because, again, you are living history right now. Okay, in 50 years, okay, maybe, there could be somebody teaching consider this. I teach a class, U.S. History, 1945 to the present. Okay, we cover modern events in that class. The things you're doing now, this is history in the making. You are witnessing it, you are living it, and so be mindful of these historical parallels so that you can go, wait a minute, these are things that we should not be doing, or hey, here's what we can do that's different from my ancestors. Here's where we can get it right, where they got it wrong. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. I don't like to get preachy, but the muse just hit, so hopefully at least change it up. We'll be back hopefully later this week with the road to the Second World War. We'll cover World War II in 2 lectures, and then we'll just see how far we can get. So as always, if you got any questions, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.